Hey guys, and welcome to the channel. As the video title suggests, I like to boast that I beat both Monster Hunter Stories games before the release of the third one. The first one was on stream and the second one was off stream. VODs of the first one are going to be at the end of the video if you want to check it out. And these were my first experience of the Monster Hunter universe. Actually, I did play I don't know if it was the first one or the second one that came for the PlayStation 2 because I rented, but I'd only played the first couple of missions and didn't finish everything. I think I traveled or something like that, so I hadn't time to finish all the game. But to all effects and purposes, the Creature Collector games were my introduction to the series. And here's what I learned and what you should know about them before playing the third, and possibly the final game of the franchise. So let's start with the stories of each game, the thing that this spin-off series is named after. In the first game, you play as a kid from a village of riders, nothing sexual. In fact, if you don't really know what riders are, they're basically the Pokemon trainer from the Monster Hunter universe. And for some reason, some weird purple fog is making monsters become enraged, and then one day an enraged Nargacuga attacks your village and kills the family of one of your childhood friends. Later, after you and your friend pass the test to become a rider, each of you set on your own adventure to discover why these monsters are becoming enraged. But why you want to cleanse and save the monster and preserve the relationship between monster and humans? The ecological relationship, of course, not the furry type. Your friend takes the opposite approach and wants to kill everything affected by the mysterious mist that's enraging them. Even your own Monstie, the Pikachu of the story. The Ratha. Of course, he sees the wrongs in his ways and he gets a redemption. You guys beat the final boss and save the world and blah blah blah, and everybody lives happily ever after. Up until the second one, of course. Okay, for the second one, you're in a different village and this time you're a teenager. Oh, and you have an incredibly hot teacher. Because why the fuck not? You're the grandchild of a legendary writer. Again, nothing sexual. Capcom should really have thought out the name before deciding to go with writer, you know? Because Hunter makes sense, you know? It's kind of like a catchy name. You kill monsters. The writer, it feels like it's way too sexual because it sounds like you're riding a cock, you know? But what the hell do I know? I'm a fucking retard. Let's keep going on. This legendary writer is suspiciously named Red, and somehow they got away with it. In a Creature Collector game, by the way. He, your grandfather, named Red, was investigating giant pits that started appearing out of nowhere, and you guessed it, they were also making monsters enraged. But this time there's also a prophecy tied to your little Ratha. And some people want it fucking dead, because that's what you do. You read text off a wall that was written thousands and thousands of years ago. Not even written, it was drawn because they didn't know how to write yet. And then you decide to kill somebody's pet because of that. That's the reasoning. And I'm not even going to say that is too unrealistic, because I think not long ago people stole that little alligator that was a pet from an old man in Florida, and also they called the cops on a pet squirrel and pet raccoon that was famous on Instagram, and they were euthanized. So yeah, I mean, it is real. Israel. Nothing related to wars here though. Okay, back to the games. Even though the second game doesn't really follow the same main character, aka you, from the first game, they do share the same universe. Characters from the first game will appear on the second game, and I get a feeling that they will also appear on the third game. But don't quote me on that, because they did make a lot of changes. But I do expect to see some familiar faces in unfamiliar places. I hope I didn't spoil you too much of the stories, but still gave you an idea of what it is and how it is told. And, you know, they aren't exactly Scorsese level cinema, but they're still better than 95% of Creature Collector game stories. So that's a win in my books. Gameplay wise, this is a really well made turn-based RPG. Sure, it would have been amazing to fight alongside your monsters using the original Monster Hunter action combat style. However, the RPG system they made actually works pretty well. Besides the normal elemental types, you know, fire, water, dragon, etc., they added a rock, paper, scissors system of attack types. They always go through when attack clashes. If you win, you gain extra damage plus some kinship recovery. If you tie, you basically don't win anything on top of basically what you were supposed to win. And if you lose, you're gonna be dealing less damage that you were supposed to be dealing. You're gonna be fighting side by side with your monstie, that's how they call the monsters that you ride on. Not the monster cocks, the monsters. And surprise, surprise, you're usually the weak link. You're not gonna be as strong as a monster. What gives? So yeah, you're gonna need to build your rider properly with good gear, items and buffs so you can coordinate attacks with your monstie for better damage. And for survival, of course. Because if you or your monstie dies 3 times in a row, you lose the battle. And that's basically game over. Of course not, you're gonna go back to the last save point. The combat is mostly the same between the first and second games, with a few differences. The second game focuses more on double battles. That means you, your monstie, plus another person and their monstie, or a hunter with no monstie. That's their double battles. Plus, you can carry 3 weapon types on your character that you can switch mid-battle. One for slash, one for pierce, and another one for bash. One for each type of defenses that the monster has. And by the way, the bosses on both of these games are actually challenging. You won't be able to overlevel your monsters and just smash your tiny flaccid weenie head on the A button until you win. You're gonna need some strategizing to win. Also, they took a page from Final Fantasy and gave each monster a limit break style kinship attack, with huge damage and awesome visuals. Which leads me to the aesthetic. The games move away from the realistic look of the main Monster Hunter series and go for a more anime style aesthetic. And I gotta give it to them, they still look great, for when they were released of course. That's why there's a huge visual jump from the first game to the second one, especially in the overworld. And the third game looks like it might be an even bigger leap. However, these games introduce their own versions of HMs, which can block exploration until you unlock a monster with the required ability. But that also apparently is worked on the Monster Hunter Stories 3, making it more fluid and stuff like that. But since we're talking about the downside of games, also known as HMs, in this game you obtain monsters by stealing eggs from a nest. Even monsters that are clearly mammals, which is what the fuck. But that isn't the main problem. The main problem is that every new monster is going to start at level 1. So if you're in the late game and want to use an Elder Dragon or something like that, sometimes it feels a little bit grindy to catch them up to the rest of your team. And that also leads me into the post game, which is actually fan-fucking-tastic for the first and the second one. It reminds me a lot of the old Pokemon games, where beating the main story would unlock an entirely new adventure, where you could catch legendaries, go against new bosses, and even experience new types of challenges. And even though it doesn't have a large amount of monsters, they are spread out in the game at the best of their capabilities. But compared to the massive roster of monsters in the main Monster Hunter games, these rosters feel a bit small, with 68 monsters in the first game and 96 monsters in the second game. And when I say monsters, I mean monsties. The ones that you can ride on. Pause. And to be fair to Pokemon, these numbers are a far cry from the original 151 Pokemon released in their first game. But from what we've seen so far, the third game seems to be expanding their roster even further. So hopefully we can at least break the 100 different monsters barrier, not counting variants though. And if you're a nerd like me, you can absolutely min-max various builds. Both games have tons of armors and weapons for your rider, and of course the ride of channeling system to optimize your monsties. But honestly, that mechanic deserves its own video, especially since it changed quite a bit between the first and second game, and it's changing again a lot between the second and third game. Conclusion. Overall, I think both games are worth playing, but they're not required to understand the story of the third game or to enjoy it. In fact, I think each of these games are great to play on their own. They offer tons of content, they are a lot of fun, and of course, you can have the monsters from Monster Hunter as pets, which is great, cool, and you can make them fight, just like Michael Vick. But the third game seems to be the best iteration so far. It seems to be huge, it seems to have lots and lots of mechanics, and it seems to have lots and lots of bosses. So let's see what we get this Friday. For those of you that watch my Creature Collector reviews and want a Creature Collector review on these games, don't worry, I'll be making separate reviews for each of these games using the same grading system so it can be fair, and it's going to be of course way more in depth. This is just a video that I wanted to make because I really like the game, the new game is coming up, and I wanted to make content about it, and I wanted to make a transition between what my channel is right now to what it's going to be for the next couple weeks, because I really want to dive deep into the game, because I really liked it. So yeah. Anyways guys, thank you guys for watching and see you on the next one. Bye bye.